Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a Learning and Growing webinar on digital composition and the first year composition classroom. Our presenter today is Professor Gregory Ramirez from St. Charles Community College. My name is Sidra, and I am a member of the marketing team here at Hawks Learning. We will have a Q&A session after the presentation, so please enter any questions that you have during the presentation into the Q&A module and we'll answer them towards the end. I will now hand it over to our presenter to take it away for the day.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Gregory Ramirez, and I'm actually from Madera Community College. I think you said St. Charles, but that's all right. No worries. I'll just go ahead and fix that. Let me go ahead and get the share screen feature going. As she had mentioned, I am going to be discussing digital composition and the first year composition classroom right here. So let me go ahead and get that going up right there. And it looks like everything is working just fine right there. So anyway, so basically I just want to go ahead and share my during this discussion with you today. And I would say, actually I should say good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. It's still morning here in California. But anyway, just letting you know that basically I'm just going to go ahead and kind of go over some things in relation to, of course, working digital composition as an assignment, what my experience has been both personally as well as just basically what kind of, maybe share some ideas and why this is something to consider. And so I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and proceed. So anyway, I should go ahead and just kind of say how I got a personal introduction to this. How I learned about it. And it was actually while I was working on my Doctor of Arts in English Pedagogy out at Murray State University, which is in Kentucky. One of my core courses for that was English 977, which is instructional technology. So we were learning about different ways to embed technology into the classroom, how to do it to the benefit, of course, of students. And one of the things that we touched upon, of course, was more specifically multimodal composition, which basically takes into account different types of, appealing to the senses, basically, as well as kind of like going beyond just the written text to go ahead and deliver ideas. And and then coming to the realization that this is actually something that is quite common, or at least is growing in terms of practice. And so I should kind of mention that one thing that was interesting about the particular classes, I did take it during the spring 2020 semester, and halfway through, that was when the COVID lockdown took place. And as probably many of you who are educators remember, or in whatever capacity you could, with the, I mentioned the lockdown specifically because that was, of course, when as instructors, whether we were, K through 12, whether we were at the community college or at universities, everything switched to being remote learning. Of course, everything was kind of thought to that we should, of course, kind of avoid any kind of gatherings at all possible. And of course, just essential workers were the ones that were allowed to actually show up to the job and so forth. And so that was really, of course, quite stunning. And I think, I, of course, hadn't seen anything like that in my lifetime. And I don't believe anyone I know had either. So that was obviously a dynamic, a real shift in what I was accustomed to as an educator. And so that was something that obviously weighed heavy on my mind. Let me go ahead and go on to the next slide here to continue with this right here. With the class, getting back to the class specifically, my professor assigned a digital story, and of course, part of the prompt was that it was to introduce a line of inquiry that you were considering for your capstone project. And so I think with that, I should point out that with the capstone project, that's what we do as part of the Doctor of Arts. It's not a dissertation as maybe like, most people might be traditionally accustomed to right there. And the capstone could, range or vary in terms of delivery. It could be something that you're working on trying to publish in a, academic journal. It could be something, I believe some people might have even did like a video as part of it. But I should point out that something that I kind of committed to was to look at equity and the first year composition, basically. That was what I had decided on before I would receive this particular assignment right there. And then I could talk a little bit later about what direction my capstone project actually went. But just, I thought I'd go ahead and move this along right here and say that when that took place, the lockdown, probably a few days into it, my professor kind of altered it or kind of opened the floodgates, so to speak, saying that we were welcome to go ahead and explore how education takes place during the lockdown, or concerns about education, concerns about access, and so on. And so that was when I decided to go ahead and take a look and go ahead and work with what I was thinking about, the idea of, again, equity, and of course, just kind of with the pandemic, of course, underway or taking place, and also just thinking about my college, which actually I should kind of give a little bit of background about. At the time when I was doing this, Madera Community College wasn't actually a college, it was community college center. And so with that being said, we were working towards accreditation. We were wanting to get independent college status. We were working towards that. In fact, to be more specific, we were part of Reedley College. We were an off-campus site, but our college, or our campus, I should say, is probably about, I want to say like 35 minutes or like 35 miles away from Reedley College. And so that obviously was kind of something that, now that we are a college, we ended up becoming a college a few months after I completed the particular assignment. So then I turned around, so now I can go ahead and say Madera Community College. But what I thought I'd do, let me go ahead, and this should play just fine, I'm hoping, is that I do have this on YouTube. I mean, worst case scenario, you could watch it in case it doesn't work here. But hopefully it streams just fine as I go ahead and put the play button right here. But this will kind of show you what I did for my final project right here. And, I named it Pandemic Ponderings of Equity. And so, it was kind of a play on the PPP or PPE, I should say, that, people were referring to in terms of like face masks and whatnot. And so anyway, like I said, this is just kind of gives you, or is meant to kind of share with you about my college, and about kind of like my students, and just kind of me as an educator, kind of the concerns that I have. So I'll try to go ahead and play this real quick for you all. And this is less, this comes in as just under 2 minutes, but this should hopefully kind of give you an idea about what I did for my final project here. Even though I was born here in California Central. Oh, excuse me, I'm not sure that, I think I might have, let me try that again. My apologies. Let's see. Hopefully it's not a buffering issue, but anyway, I'll just go and let it play. Even though I was born here in California Central Valley, raised here and reside here, I cannot help but think I have had it easier than others. I am reminded of this whenever I commute and take the Avenue 12 exit off of Highway 99. Among the vineyards is the Madera Community College Center, a campus where higher education is possible for those willing to seize the opportunity. And while it may be closing in on becoming an independent college, I can't help but wonder how the students are handling their courses in the midst of this current pandemic. Like every other school, COVID-19 has coerced us to deliver our courses online.
Granted, I have heard about some internet providers offering free internet service for anyone needing it for school or work. Our school, like others, has loaned laptops to students needing them, and my understanding is some instructors have even modified their curriculum. But have we really solved every problem that this pandemic has produced? How can we anticipate the mental well-being of our students through quarantine? Are we providing the proper accommodations for students with disabilities? Is loaning out laptops enough? Even if I am gracious towards my students, what about any other instructors they have? It would be a cliche to say, only time will tell. Even worse would be to dismiss any damage done with the words, time heals all wounds. Who knows how long this shelter in place will last? But it is safe to say students are only one bad experience away from giving up. I am not naive to think that every student will benefit from what we determined we must do, nor do I think we can just go back to the way things were. Without a doubt, this is a game changer.
Okay, so hopefully that kind of gives you an idea, at least, or at least shows you what I did as part of my final project, and kind of basically shows you, what I do, or kind of the culture that I have, or that I am as part of my work. For the record, I've been full time over at Madera Community College since 2008. So, I've certainly seen it grow, and I think that also too, watching that video and realizing that that's over 2 years old. Certainly, there's some things that we could kind of say in hindsight that there was certainly an impact from the pandemic, the lockdown in particular. With, of course, I would say certainly, with our students, and we had to, of course, make changes, and we had to make them quite quickly with our teaching. I would also probably add as well, there are some things like mental health that certainly I think took an impact, and as well as physical health, I would even throw out as well. Oh my gosh, what was it? The COVID, I forget what it is exactly, but I know, like, for example, I'll go ahead and say that, I had put on some weight during that time myself. So anyway, just kind of moving on right here to the next slide. After that, after this particular course right here, I should point out that I was invited by my professor, and along with 2 other classmates, to go ahead and present as part of the 4Cs, the Conference on College Composition Communication. We did that virtually back in 2021. I should also point out that earlier this year as well, my former professor and a classmate and a former classmate of mine, we actually presented as part of the ARA annual meeting, and that's for the American Educational Research Association. We were promoting a chapter that we're going to have published in a book titled Toward Critical Multimodality Theory, Research, and Practice in Transformative Educational Spaces. So I'll be honest, I found it very interesting with what happened with me personally, with that whole working in that particular classroom, and kind of coming out of that, what resulted, in being able to do 2 conference presentations, as well as being able to collaborate with my former professor and former classmate, on a chapter. So, I was very happy about that. So anyway, that's kind of where I kind of developed this interest, of course, in this idea of digital composition. But in terms of the classroom itself, I've been talking about it as a student, or just kind of like my personal approach to it, turning around and asking my students, something that I did when after, or I would say starting in fall of actually 2021, I came back from a sabbatical. I used a semester sabbatical to go ahead and complete my capstone project. But when I returned, I decided to, in lieu of a final exam, to go ahead and start having my first year composition students submit a digital composition, a digital story of sorts. And usually on that prompt, what I do is I ask students to go ahead and choose a topic that is essentially reflecting on the course theme. In my first year composition courses, I use a course theme, and for the past few years, what I've been using is connection. Just the idea of connecting with others, how do you strengthen connections, what weakens connections, and so forth. We explore, in the different units, we explore various kind of topics. In the past, I've looked at education. I know I looked at, in fact, currently, with this semester, I believe the current one they're looking at is just like overall health. How does like dealing with that work right there. Even one idea that we relate to later on is like addiction. What connect or what how does that relate to connection, if at all? And then even like the idea of bias comes in. And the novel, or I should say not the novel, but the actual like book that we look at is Vivek Murthy's Together, which is actually, I would recommend if anyone has not heard of that one or has not had a chance to read that there. But I could go ahead and show on the next slide the prompt right here. Oh, my apologies. So this kind of hopefully shows you the prompt, and so it's kind of laid out just like any of my other essay prompts, laid out right there. And, I go ahead and allow students to choose from a particular topic. And so you can see 3 different topics right there. And from what I've seen, if memory serves me right, I don't think anybody goes, or any of my students have gone with the 3rd option. And, thinking about it, that might actually be the most complex among them, where, I'm asking them to develop, inquiry questions, or I'm sorry, or their own inquiry questions, like, basically create a unit. Like if they had to create a unit based on what we've seen throughout the semester, what would they suggest for a class like this? And so that might be a little bit kind of a tall order for them. So maybe that's why they haven't gone that route, which is fine with me. But I think the couple of things I just kind of put towards the bottom right here. In fact, you'll probably see this right here in this particular paragraph. I kind of tell them that this should be as refined as possible, but don't panic. I understand this is not a film course, which it's not, of course. That's not what I'm trying to do with this. I'm just saying that, the most important, and you have to excuse the lapse in, grammar right there as I catch it, but, the most important part of the assignment is that you submit it. But I'm saying that digital composition is growing in use and in reputation among writing courses. So having some knowledge of this is worthwhile, but I leave it open, saying, please contact the instructor if you have any questions about the assignment. I should also kind of point out too that it's not meant to be something what you saw me do that clocked in under 2 minutes. This right here, I just say, should be at least 1 full minute, no more than 3 minutes. Really kind of keep it, short. Simple, just kind of keep it straightforward, not anything too strenuous. And then, they would either upload it, hopefully as a working URL. They can do that through Canvas, a media file. And I'll talk a little bit more about, things that they can do to kind of upload, or, different kind of writing tools, or I'm sorry, tools that they can use for this. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So anyway, just let's see this next one right here, and this should work just fine. I thought I'd go ahead and share with you an example from one of my students, again, working with that idea of connection, kind of reflecting on the theme. And this student did give me permission to share with it. So I've actually used this as an example in my other classes right here, although the student doesn't identify themselves in here. So I think that that's probably just fine, which is not like a requirement that you have to identify yourself, but hopefully you can kind of see some of the ways that this particular student is working with different modalities. And so let me go ahead and, why am I, okay, I was having a little trouble finding the cursor for a second, my apologies. This should hopefully work just fine. Let me make sure the sound is, and hopefully you were able to hear the sound. I remembered that I, of course, had closed captions for the final project that I shared a few minutes ago. So I put those on. So hopefully that made up in case there were any sound issues here.
Connection. Through this class, I became more focused on my relationship with others, and my appreciation of the value and importance of good relationships in my life increased. I became aware of my need for connection and began to form a positive relationship with those around me. My relationship with my family has improved. We spend more time with each other because I learned the value of this thing more while taking this course. Marthy's book Together helped me see connections in many ways and at a deeper level. Having read this book, I came to understand what people who are depressed or addicted are going through, as well as how I can help them, and also how I must always strive to improve myself and my relationship. I cannot say that I am a person who has a healthy and a good relationships. Although I have a good relationships with some members of my family, I always felt the need to make friends with people of my age. As an immigrant from Yemen to America, it was hard for me to form friends due to many reasons, including language. However, now that my language has improved and I have taken this course, I am more motivated to form good friends. By the end of this class, I feel inspired to improve my connection with those around me and with society at large.
Okay. So again, hopefully that kind of shows you one of the examples from a former student of mine in terms of how this particular student went ahead and approached the topic or one of the topics that were from the prompt right there. So in case, up to this point, you're still in the kind of camp thinking, but why, why should we incorporate this, or why should I consider incorporating this as part of the, in the first year composition classroom? I would just go ahead and kind of, refer to these particular quotations that I found. Now, this particular individual, and I don't know if I'm getting the first name right, I want to say Yoon-Ju Yu. This particular individual was talking about using it in a developmental writing course, which I know is kind of, from at least here in California, I know that we're kind of working on, phasing out any kind of remedial courses at community colleges and all. I don't know exactly how that works in other states. I know that's been, somewhat controversial, of course, certainly some strong feelings with that. But anyway, this particular individual or writer, again, kind of is mentioning that students in his developmental courses claim that digital writing required more use of higher order thinking skills, such as creativity, than text-only writing did. So, again, just kind of, making that comparison and contrast between what we're traditionally used to with just, writing it like, or we might call it alphabetical text, or just kind of like, text only kind of approach right there when we have it just written out, or what we're normally used to when we submit essays or papers right there. But looking at this and saying that there's, kind of a requirement to think outside the box, basically, to go ahead and kind of, work in other ways beyond just simply some of the, maybe limitations that we have as part of the page. Cynthia Self is someone who, let's see, goes ahead and, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Cynthia Self is actually quite prominent in terms of talking about multimodal and digital composition. And I got this particular quote indirectly from her, as you might notice from the citation right here. However, her argument is that if our profession continues to focus solely on teaching alphabetic composition, we run the risk of making composition studies increasingly irrelevant to students engaging in contemporary practices of communication. Certainly, I think, and probably one thing that we picked up on during the pandemic is that our students are probably not as savvy with educational technology. I mean, maybe, not without some kind of guidance. And of course, there's some issues with access or whatever, but I think it's pretty common or certain that, many of them do have smartphones. Those are very prevalent. They do use, of course, various apps. And in fact, my own children, kind of look at something like Facebook as being passe. And I think it's been like that for at least a few years. But anyway, the children, or I should say students these days, certainly use like TikTok and Snapchat, various features like that. So they do have, some experience with technology, and they are, using or utilizing those resources. So I think that that's one thing that's certainly key is, trying to kind of go where they are as students, to go ahead and I should go ahead and say for the record, I'm not saying to get rid of like, essays completely, but to try to see if there's some room to go ahead and, incorporate, something that would be multimodal or even, like the digital story in some capacity. That's something that really is kind of at the basis of what I'm discussing right here. And I think in some ways we'll find, they'll come to find that that's something that will benefit them, I think, in the future. And in terms of ubiquity of technology, in his book, Digital Storytelling, Joe Lambert writes about the mobile device. He says that has changed everything: our lifestyle, our connections to each other, our connections to the world. It has become our postmodern demon, a place where a bit of our souls now consistently resides. So, just kind of saying that, people, have the, smartphone, or, as he refers to it, as the mobile device, with them wherever they go. They're constantly checking their notifications, and, any kind of panic that sets in whenever we lose a smartphone, or if something happens to it. I'll never forget, several years ago when I, was at the water park and I completely forgot that I had my smartphone in my pocket when I went ahead and entered the wave pool. And of course, that was that did it for me in terms of the actual, phone itself. And so, and just the panic that set in at that point. So I think that, what Lambert says about it having a bit of our souls is just, couldn't be, I couldn't agree with that statement any bit more right there. So, just some things to kind of think about and to go ahead and discuss, because again, I mean, we had talked about the idea of alphabetic text and digital composition. So, there might be that question about the relevance. Again, where is this fit in, or how am I still working with these? Now, I should point out again that I do this towards the end of the semester. I personally, I think of one instructor, someone who was in my cohort. I think he was working with, I want to say either, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting whether it was junior high or high school students. It might have been junior high students, looking back on it. But my point is that I think he actually did his digital composition early in the semester and then worked with it to try to build their skills as writers. But some of the parallels that you'll see, and hopefully you kind of noticed as you were looking at my project as well as what my student did, is, there's still that idea that there has to be clarity, that there should be something that is clear, visually as well as orally right there, in terms of what, the person can hear. So, you want to make sure that there's, of course, clear sound. I usually encourage my students that if all possible to go ahead and have some kind of closed captions. As you see that, again, that's what I did with my final project, to go ahead and just make sure that, in case anybody likes to go ahead and read it. And, I'll be honest, there's times when I'm watching programs and even I throw on the closed captions just to go ahead and make sure that I don't miss anything, or if it's noisy around me or whatever the case might be. So, but I think there's that idea of clarity, which you do see that parallel again, even in regular writing, there has to be clarity linguistically, and so forth, for the ideas to be delivered in an effective manner. Crediting sources, I think, is something that's also key as well, something that I encourage my students to do. And then you, at least with my final project, you might see that I had a listing of the different things that I went ahead and incorporated, so that way I was just saying, oh, these are not my own. I mean, many of that footage was my own, what you saw of the campus, of course, but there were a couple of images or stills that I used that I actually got from Creative Commons. And then also I did have a sound, kind of like a background music playing faintly, which you probably could have heard, but still I credited that nonetheless. Support examples. There's got to be something that, of course, if you're making a point or you're trying to elaborate on something, or that you have some kind of backup to it, that you're not just kind of putting it out there, but you're having something that can, of course, be seen and noticed by us, the viewer. And of course, seeing that that is, in terms of, how should I say, something that can capture the attention of the viewer, but also, the same thing would go for the reader if you're just working with, alphabetic text, or I should maybe call it traditional composition, I believe might be a term that we've seen before, or maybe have heard before. But also, you organization, structure, the placement of certain ideas, images, sounds. You also have transitions. How do you move from one, maybe image to another, one clip to another, so, making sure that whatever you're doing it effectively and trying to kind of weave that through. So again, seeing these particular parallels, I think, is important. Because, for us, particularly as educators, so that way we can see that this is not just simply something that we do just because we want to break from just, seeing the written text, but that we're actually, still conveying these particular concepts right there. And also too, I mean, if need be, I mean, and, whether or not you all use rubrics, that's up to you, of course. That just varies. Some instructors I know do, some don't. But if you do use rubrics, I mean, certainly, providing a rubric, I know I have for the digital composition assignment, to go ahead and kind of lay out exactly how you're going to grade it. And, even kind of using that, for familiar language that they would see from what the out of class essays that they compose and that they submit. And, if you're still kind of saying to yourself, yeah, but I want them to, be writers or whatever, and I still want, some writing to be done, well, I would encourage you, something maybe to consider if you are not already, if you haven't done this already or still on the fence about this, is, have them write, still have them submit a 1 to 2 page reflection of sorts on or writing assignment, I should say, that is about this particular experience, and ask them to see what the parallels were. How was maybe the, in fact, maybe even ask them what they prefer, if they think it would have been easier just doing it as an essay. So you can go ahead and, pose your questions, or, ask them to, whatever it is that you want to get from them, go ahead and put it out there for the students. And I would even just, and I know for myself, this is something that I do. I kind of going back to what I talked about with my first year composition, what I do is that for my 1A, English 1A is first year composition over at Madera Community College. That's where they submit or that's for the ACT class, I should say, is for the digital composition. The 205 is the 2-unit co-requisite, because that's what, they've kind of advocated here in California, is to go ahead and use co-requisites instead of, levels below transfer. As I had mentioned, California is trying to, eliminate, or they're working towards eliminating remedial courses, basically. But having it in a 205, I think works, and you can kind of see for yourself. I keep it simple. I say that it should be like probably a 2-page reflection, at least get it onto the second page right there, just kind of looking at the experience, just kind of saying to yourself, okay, this was what I was trying to do. This is what I did end up doing. And I've kind of modified that from Jody Shipka, who comes up with statement of goals. And oh my gosh, I have it written down on a different slide. And of course, I'm losing it right now. It's kind of, memory is kind of fading right now as I speak and blanking, my luck. But as you can basically see right there, and I think that's important too, because I would also I would add this right here by having them reflect, particularly in a 205 class like mine. I would say that in the 205, there's a lot of process in terms of what they do, trying to really kind of instill the idea of writing as a process, writing as something that you do in stages, not just something you do the night before. I mean, you could still work on it the night before, but, just trying to just put it out there that, this is not something that we just kind of hold off on. And then also to reflection, metacognition, so I think that having something like this certainly is along the lines of metacognitive, really asking them to go ahead and kind of turn around and look at their own process and just kind of say to themselves, look, this is how it was doing this particular assignment. And this is, these are the challenges that I had, or these are the things that I, didn't realize, in taking this particular experience. Certainly, I think what it boils down to is just being able to give them at least the experience with this, I think will benefit them. And, there maybe even occasions down the road where they, whatever path they end up taking as part of their academic career, that they would be able to put something together for a future professor or instructor that they can go ahead and turn around and present and say, this is what this is what I have to share with you, for this particular assignment right there. So this again is something that I'm just kind of thinking to myself, hopefully, or there's possibility maybe down the road they might have to do this. So hopefully this will kind of get them accustomed to it and get them used to going ahead and working with that. Now, I do have a listing here, and and by all means, I think even just typing in the words video editing software in Google, I think will bring up a pretty good search right here. I don't know if you'll catch everything that's on this particular slide. I'll just kind of leave that open to you. But certainly some things such as, if you're kind of interested or wondering like what's out there, such things as Adobe Express, Animoto, Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic. I know those are ones that, are out there. I personally use Camtasia, but I believe I get Camtasia as part of, being an instructor at my school. And then some of these, of course, you can use some of these for free. Some of them do have like, free trials or whatever, or, so you might just kind of remind your students, hey, if you use it for this, particular amount of time, just make sure that you cancel it before the trial ends. And I know maybe students may not want to subscribe or pay monthly for a particular program, which is fine, or, completely understandable if they don't want to do so, but, just let them know. But those ones usually are like, kind of like tend to have more bells and whistles, so to speak. Usually the ones that are just free, completely free, are usually just fine to go ahead and kind of put together and to go ahead and use right there. And then I had mentioned Creative Commons as being something that, students should kind of take a look at as well. What's nice about Creative Commons, in fact, I'll even go and put, I want to say that that's a little CC mixture right there. But those two right there are basically, you don't have to worry about copyright, because of course that might be something that may have popped in people's heads. But what about copyright? Well, obviously having to get permission and all that, that can, be strenuous and everything like that. But with something like Creative Commons, or this Creative Commons would be for like images, basically, where you can go ahead and access that. And usually many of them, and you can research, I mean, there's like, I think I want to say thousands or even like over 1 million different images that you could choose from. Of course, it, varies depending on what you're researching. But with Creative Commons, they're usually kind of like, oh, as long as you state the person's name or the fact you get it from Creative Commons or whatever, you're perfectly fine with it. Or, it doesn't require any kind of, contact of the individual or anything along those lines right there. Same thing goes with CC Mixture right there. That's for, of course, audio. If, like I said, I played some sound during my digital story right there. So, same thing would go with that, just as long as you credit it or give some kind of credit to the individual, that would be just fine right there, or would just be acceptable. Oh yeah, and then this is what I was talking about right here with Jody Shipka's statement of goals and choices. That's kind of what I, did, like a little modified version of that, but I know those in particular kind of elaborate and kind of go along the lines of, reflecting on a digital story or a multimodal composition, just basically looking at as well at the idea of, in case you're kind of a little perplexed about how do I even assess something like this, because wondering how would I grade a particular assignment that's submitted in this fashion, which is completely understandable. And and actually that was one other class that I remember taking, a very enlightening course I remember taking as part of my doctoral studies, was one on assessment. And so really kind of made me rethink certain things that I do and certain approaches that I have. And then also too, right there, that last one right there is storycenter.org. If I'm not mistaken, I had mentioned Joe Lambert earlier. He's somebody who I believe is associated with that, but you can see a bunch of digital stories right there. And I think the one thing too, which I could, if I'm going to go off script a little bit, I don't have a slide dedicated to it, but the idea of sometimes just knowing that with being able to kind of present it as a digital story, that there's a certain power in being able to, or a certain way that you might be able to connect with the individual in a way that's different than how a writer might connect with a reader, just on the page. Just certain ways or certain deliveries that you could go ahead and do right there. And so that would just be what you would have. And I would even kind of point out the fact that I think it's safe to say that many of us probably, I don't know, in the last, I might even say 50 years or whatever, anybody who probably in the last 50 years. And then, of course, the younger you get, the more likely this would probably be true. But chances are, like in terms of films, you might have more, you probably have seen more films than you have read books. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the case for every single person out there, but I'm certainly saying that that's probably the case for many people out there. It would be, I would have to look into that, but I wouldn't doubt if there's, a study that's been done in that regard right there. So anyway, just some of these are the sources that I had used and referenced as part of this particular presentation right here. Again, I had mentioned and listed Lambert. And then the Wysocki one was the one where I found the quotation from Cynthia's self. Yoon Ju Yu is listed right here as well. So, some sources again that you can look to, and there's plenty of sources out there that relate to digital composition, or multimodal composition is another way to do it, or digital story if you're doing a search through an academic journal website. So anyway, I'll just go ahead and at this point kind of put this right here, some information about myself. Again, I'm at Madera Community College, and any one of you are welcome to email me if you have questions or you need me to elaborate or you want to discuss some more. I also did create a website when I was working on my doctoral studies real quick. I thought I'd include that as well. And then I'll have to go ahead and try and upload this to that, because what I've done is, for certain conference presentations or whatever, I've uploaded materials or whatever video that I can. And I've actually done a HOGS learning webinar, but that was actually 2 years back almost. And so I believe I had uploaded that on there as well. So anyway, thank you for your time. And I guess I would just go ahead and turn it back. And I believe this is a Q&A. Hopefully this isn't too early to start it, but anyway, I'll go ahead and turn it over.
No worries. All right, so we have 2 questions. First off, how do you assess your students' projects?
Okay, yeah, and hopefully I would kind of answered that as we were going in, but yeah, that's certainly a good thing, a great question right there, and probably something I should have embedded in this particular PowerPoint is, of course, a rubric right there. But like I said, just certainly looking at those kind of components and trying to, again, get the students to see the parallels for themselves in terms of what we do. In fact, as I had said, the digital composition, as I call it, is at the end of the semester. So they should be used to that kind of verbiage by now, when I talk about organization or when I talk about transitions, I kind of, again, going back to those things is clarity. So I try to convey that in terms of a rubric. And I'll be honest, it's not something that I turn around and expect them to be refined, or I expect them to be like film school material, because it's not a film, or I don't see it in terms of a film. Now I will admit that I have taught film, that was years ago, but so I do have some understanding of different, how should I say, kind of components that, in terms of the structure, or in terms of, maybe the techniques and whatnot, but, just basically assessing it more so on, is it is it actually on topic? Is it following like kind of the parameters I've set, falling somewhere between the 1 to 3 minutes right there, I would say. And also too, just basically, how substantive it is in terms of, making its case, or, kind of, and also too, even maybe some, I guess you could say, bonus points. I mean, not extra credit, but certainly maybe, being open to any kind of creativity on the student's part. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. For the student example that you shared in the beginning, what did that student earn, just out of curiosity?
Oh, great. Great point right there. In fact, what's interesting about that one, if memory serves me right, I should have did my research beforehand, but in fact, actually, this kind of goes back to what I'm talking about with assessment. I was always working with 1,000 points, but now I'm down to 100, in terms of my, in terms of total points for the course. The digital composition is worth 10 points. That student, I am going to say with 90% accuracy that student had earned the full 10. I decided, I thought that particular student did a great job in terms of the presentation, of the visuals. I thought they were quite, they had chosen some very lively, I think there's quite a bit of, at least in I would say, maybe some nice color to it. I think that student had made a smart choice in terms of putting like most, if not all, of the words that she was saying, put it on the screen. I think there was a good transition. I thought the background music worked. In fact, what's interesting is that I know that last semester I shared that example with another example. And I would say like almost all of my students were saying, oh yeah, that's the stronger example, or they even thought that was more effective in terms of its delivery, in terms of what they did. So yeah, that student earned a 10 out of 10 on it.
That's awesome. So we have a couple more questions.
Okay.
What equipment and access do students need to have to do a digital composition?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I think it's best, I mean, for them to try to, make or try to get that access as best they can. Like I said, what's nice is even a smartphone. In fact, what am I thinking here? I have an iPhone. I don't particularly use this app right here, but it comes installed with iMovie. So I know that, but there's other apps out there too that you could probably download on that. So I think chances are a smartphone of sorts is probably like their best bet. Um, Hopefully, if they're not able to do that, they can, find some way to get their hands on it from a friend or someone along those particular lines right there. I think a laptop helps of sorts, some type of laptop or some kind of, in fact, what's nice about a laptop too, I mean, even the one that I'm using, which is from work or from my campus right here, is that we, of course, pretty much the laptops, I can't think of the last time laptops didn't come with some kind of webcam of sorts. So they could even use that. Even if they have to do something, that isn't as maybe refined. I know I'd forgotten to mention how Canvas, which I believe many people use these days, many instructors. I don't know. I could be wrong. I mean, some people could still be on Blackboard, and that's fine if they are. I mean, I haven't used Blackboard in a few years myself, but I know with Canvas, there's a feature that you can go ahead and record. So you could use that. I mean, worst case scenario, you just might have to kind of be open to maybe having something a little bit more stationary, such as maybe a person talking to a screen, or maybe even having, or even if that person has to use like some kind of visual, hold up certain like maybe cards or, of sorts, they could maybe go that route. So I think, it's really kind of gives, I think it's really up to the student, but yeah, I would probably say at the very least, maybe some access. And then also too, of course, I would just add that, that there's the ability to check out laptops. I know over at our campus, and I think many campuses do that. I know that's kind of a, can be a bit of a problem in some cases, I think, just depending on how many are available, I suppose. But there are, I would probably say at the very least, a smartphone and a laptop, I would probably say is recommended, just so that way you can kind of see it, on a bigger screen.
All right, I have a two-part question. Do
Sure.
you devote class time to assist students and to learn the technology? And how much time does it take away from your instructional time?
Oh, no, great question. Well, the interesting part is that, and of course, because of the pandemic and everything else, is because I have only had really the chance to do that in person last and during the spring, this past spring semester. So I did teach a class in person, a 1A. Yeah, I pretty much devoted a whole class meeting to, kind of showing examples. And, I even showed my example, just kind of say like, hey, this is, kind of what I did, just for the record. I wasn't trying to like do it in a way to say like, hey, look at mine, mine's brilliant, or whatever. It needs to be as good as mine even. But just to kind of show them what I've done in the past, or what I've kind of had a grappling with it myself. I think that's important, to kind of show that or to model that to students. We even are encouraged to do that sometimes, or I've even heard being encouraged to do that sometimes, even with our own writing. But getting back to the question, my class that I'm thinking of, it was about an hour and 50 minutes each class meeting. I mean, that doesn't account for like 10 minutes for a break of sorts. So, I mean, no more than 100 minutes roughly. I think you could probably kind of introduce this concept to them, have them look at it, share some ideas, and then, and then even kind of talk a little bit about the video software, if at all possible, maybe even going to the computer lab and even kind of demonstrating it for yourself. That would be some time to go ahead and say, hey, look, and even just, projecting that on the screen, quick Google search, here's the different video software that's out there for you, and just kind of showing them, hey, look, there's Screencastify, there's Screencast-O-Matic, among the others. Saying, hey, look, this one right here, it looks like, oh, wow, this one offers, these kind of features right here. Oh, this one right here, you can do this as long as you have, if you wanted to take advantage of their free trial, 7-day trial or something like that. I think I remember when I kind of introduced, like, for example, real quick, I had one that I think gave you like a 14-day trial, and they think had to do the thing within 14 days. So I'm like, oh, well, look, so you'll be done before you have to even, or you'll have it submitted before you do that. I'm like, just remember to make sure if you do that trial to, cancel it. So yeah, I mean, certainly being able to kind of model that. And, I could probably, looking back on it, do more in terms of saying, like, this is how you do it, or this is how you actually, move it or shift the screens right there. It can be time consuming to do that. I know I spent hours, believe it or not, on the final project that I submitted for my doctoral class. And also too, what was nice, which I guess is up to any one of you. I know my instructor, my professor, she kind of had us do like a rough draft, and we kind of did it in stages. But that I would just say is completely up to any instructor in terms of how much time they want to devote to going ahead and the process, or even having rough drafts, or even conferences related to that even.
Awesome, thank you. We have one final question. Do you give students any low stakes digital composition assignments?
Oh, wow. Great question. I not really, I guess. I guess the closest thing to low stakes might be the reflection, in terms of the, just being able to put something together, just like the 1 to 2 page, this is how it went for me. That would be the closest to that, but that wouldn't really count as a digital composition. No, I think that would be a great idea. I mean, even, I think probably something, keeping it low stakes if you wanted to adopt it in that fashion. I think that, that would be a great idea, because, of course, and again, hopefully I didn't come across saying, like, essays or out of class essays are passe, don't do them anymore. I'm not saying that at all whatsoever. I'm just saying, basically, again, consider incorporating the digital composition in some capacity, because I think that students might enjoy it, and that they might actually learn something about the writing process that maybe kind of traditionally they might not normally attain.
Alrighty. Well, that looks like we have all the time we have for questions. Thank you, Professor Ramirez, and thank you all for attending today. If you or any of your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing webinar series, please go ahead and submit your proposal to the Learning and Growing website, which I'm going to go ahead and link in the chat right now. We will be emailing you a link to view the recording of this webinar once it's available, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you. I think that was a great session. I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar. Thank you so much for
Oh,
all.
thank you so much for your help and everything. And I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you for your praise and everything. So yeah,
No
I
problem.
appreciate your help and everything. And all. Take care.
No problem. Hope you feel better.
All right, thank you. Take care. Bye.
All right, bye.